The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavioral loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from.
Attention is the absolutely most important spiritual teaching, and it is also the most important quality of your life. And it is funny that we talk about it as some kind of thing that just happens, and it is not like something that people spend actively a lot of time thinking about. You might spend more thinking about it if you notice you're getting distracted all the time, or when you notice that you have ADHD and things are not kind of flowing how you want them to flow. But focus like on this meta perspective that everything that is real in your life is dependent on what you pay attention to. So attention is this force that is kind of ought to define or ought to witness that controls everything from your career choices, from your own successes, from your failures, from bad decisions to good decisions, to spiritual awakenings and insights, to deep enlightenment through meditation. It governs if you focus on negative philosophies and builds new philosophies for you. It creates belief systems and destroys belief systems. It gives you the ability to empathize or to deny and reject other people's perspective. It is the core force of your life. And still, a lot of people have a very shallow understanding of what attention really is and why attention is so powerful in this existential work. Attention, if you want to define it, it is where your peripheral vision filters whatever becomes important and then puts its focus on it. Or better said, where your peripheral awareness filters what is important to it and then puts it into its focus. Vision would be a very limited way of describing it, as attention is way more than just vision. You can close your eyes and pay attention to the bottom of your feet, and you can pay attention to the top of your hair, and you don't have to move your eyes whatsoever. But it does feel like seeing in a way, as if you're witnessing to the core. Like the sensation of something in focus feels like seeing it, independent of what you see is like a sound. So you have peripheral attention, or what you can also call awareness, which is basically everything that is around the focal point. And this is always there, kind of like in the background, and you notice all of the stuff going on. And it is less like discriminatory. It basically notices everything that is going on. So when you practice awareness, then you practice whatever is going on around you. And then attention is wherever the focus is. It is that which you experience most intensely, and this which stinks out to you as kind of like most of your reality in a given moment. You might be aware of everything around you, but if you pay attention to what I'm saying to you, then it is my voice that is in your focus, like in the attention that you're paying, and everything else is in the peripheral vision. And if you're very aware, then you might even notice when the attention moves towards another object that becomes suddenly more of interest, or if your attention goes into your head and you have like a thought and you're not listening anymore. And this ability to notice what your attention is doing is called metacognition. Now, I have a YouTube video on this channel that I've called Spirituality is Just Metacognition, which means that all what the spiritual path is really about is noticing where is your attention going and why, and then observing with attention and your peripheral awareness why it is moving and when it is moving around. So it is weirdly matter that you can put attention on attention itself, and this is what is rarely done by people. The reason for this is that wherever your attention flows is naturally where your ego identity also wants to flow. This is at least the case for most people. Your ego actually tries to control your attention and identifies with what you're focusing on. This is how you can have pain in your leg that comes out of nowhere, and then you're automatically paying attention towards it, and then you get this feeling of I am in pain, and then you might experience all of your reality as if you are the pain. Like the entire focus of your existence is now just in your leg when there's so much other stuff going on. And in a way, if you're not aware enough, you don't have the peripheral vision to notice that your pain is not actually objectively the only thing that is going on. And there's so much other stuff going on in your awareness. And this is why there's also this division between suffering and pain. And it's not because you kind of like remove the ego or remove the sense of self and suddenly all pain doesn't exist anymore, but it's more so that you look at the pain as something much more objective, as a tiny little dot in a sea of conscious experience. And that at the end of the day, the only way you make suffering so realized is because you keep ruminating on the pain and resisting it, and by it increasing it, and therefore putting like your attention on the pain with kind of sort of obsessive force. On the other side, you also don't want to reject your attention to it because, I mean, the pain is a signal to tell you that something is wrong and needs attending to. And therefore, it's natural to also kind of want to look at it. The question is, what else are you ignoring in your field while this is happening? And this is kind of the key to what needs to happen psychologically to become free of suffering. When you suffer, you resist putting attention on something, but also feel kind of forced to put attention on it. So on one hand, something is saying, look at this, and at the same time, something else is saying, don't look at this. So now you have friction, you have tension, and this tension creates suffering. It is the core of what leads to discomfort. Now, what people do is they think, okay, therefore, in order to not suffer, I remove the tension and look somewhere else. And if I can't do it on my own, now let me do it by force, which for people means alcohol, which means smoking weed, which means watching pornography, which means going to the casino, playing YouTube videos, talking to people, going out. Like there's so many ways people cope with the fact that their attention is leading you to look to something painful. This is also the crucial part, or like the crucial mechanism that makes you want to numb out the pain, especially if you're going to something very sad or traumatic, or you're mourning something sad that has happened, and then you're remembering, you're like, oh, I don't want to remember it. Let me focus on something else. And there's an odd balance that must happen here that is very difficult for people to grasp. Because if you really want to fully come to terms with whatever your ego is dealing with and where it is causing the resistance, the most important spiritual practice is really to look at everything in your experience that is uncomfortable. It is willingly saying, okay, I'm going to put attention to the part that feels sad. I'm going to put attention to the part that feels angry. I'm going to let these feelings happen and then experience them fully with my own awareness or my own attention being directed willfully at this place. This is what processes emotions. And this is what most people cannot do, because most people maybe do it a little bit and then they want to look away. And this isn't just a thing about processing like some traumatic or bad event, but it is all the ways in which your ego distracts you from looking at yourself. When you tell somebody a lie and you actually think it is the truth, and you don't want to admit to yourself that you're lying because it is kind of subtle or something that, yeah, let's just not really go into. And then the ego uses kind of like its own like flinching and puts your attention to somewhere else. And then this gets into like a habit. And this habit becomes an ego architecture, or like an ego complex, which becomes part of the ego architecture, which is then the identity that keeps this alive. And then in a way, your identity is kind of like the layers above the complex that is keeping this lie alive. And now you have the lie underneath that you don't want to pay attention to or didn't want to pay attention to at a given time. Now you've lied around this and you weren't actually aware that you were lying in the first place because it wasn't malicious. You just didn't want to look at it. So you had to lie in order to not look at it. And then you learned certain behaviors as a top layer in order to cover the complex that is hiding the lie. And now, if you want to look at yourself, you need to put a lot of attention onto the thing in order to deconstruct the layers, deconstruct the complex, and then find the lie underneath. And this entire process is extremely uncomfortable and counterintuitive. And in this sense, what I also said in the past is that the spiritual path is really a path of proving yourself wrong consistently. And what this means is paying attention to the thing that you're lying about, that you're dishonest about with yourself, that you kind of have tucked in a crevice of your mind you do not want to pay attention to. Because the way down through the layers and the complexes towards the lie usually liberates a lot of emotions that you have been tried to not feel in the first place. And it's this emotional energy that is stored in your body, and as much as you try to pretend it isn't there, it is controlling everything. And it might be an emotion that you've stored in the body for like 15 years, that you haven't been honest. And some people then believe, no, I know my flaws, I know my mistakes, I know how I function. And some people can even articulate their own complex well. And then you might see this with a lot of people who are very self-aware. They might acknowledge, yeah, I have a drug problem, or yeah, I'm sometimes dishonest, I'm so sorry, or yeah, I've made like this mistake, or I've been very arrogant or disrespectful to you here. And you can admit to yourself that you have the complex. And then you believe that you're very self-aware or very spiritually advanced or very like intellectual or whatever. But the complex is actually just operating on the level of the head. And you haven't actually done the work for yourself to pay attention with enough discipline to pierce through the complex towards a deeper layer. And then you see actually how much work there's to be done once you unform the layers that are underneath here. And then you actually move to the ego. So you can use your intellect to always stay in the realm of your complexes and acknowledge all your fault and say how bad the world is and say how terrible your life is, and then just keep complaining and being frustrated with yourself, but not actually do the work, which the entire work is really to put attention on the thing that the ego does not want to look at. My goal with this YouTube channel is to help people move through their life with greater awareness and attention, precisely to figure out what it is that they're hiding from themselves, which is what I do in my ego architecture audits. And in the coming months, I'll open a community where I want to, teach everybody in this group how to do this work, both for themselves and also for like the environment, and to just make the world more aware of the complexes that are going on in people's minds. And right now I'm having a waitlist that you can find in my Substack to register for whenever this community launches, as I will limit the number of people that can enter this community at the beginning to 25 people. My ego audits will also become more expensive once the community launches. So if you've always been on the fence and interested about it, then right now is a good time. The difficulty in paying attention, both to whatever my ego audit could do for you, is also true with what your own self-reflection can do for you. And it is the issue of trust and fear. And in a way, once you move deeper down these layers and make like a commitment to like really look at yourself, you kind of need to trust whatever you're looking at. Like, it requires a lot of self-trust to be able to hold you, to hold yourself in place and like keep yourself somewhat together whenever you see whatever you've been hiding for yourself. And the ego knows this, and it is very, very self-aware about this and very clever about it. So it actively denies and avoids very obvious things about yourself in order to not look at whatever you're not wanting to look at. So it requires you to kind of make this shift in realizing that there's like a deeper part, like a deeper awareness, like a deeper consciousness within you that does actually want to know. And that this pursuit for truth is, as much as it is a philosophical search and an existential search, really a personal search. The desire to look at whatever you've been hiding as kind of like a true kernel about yourself, and then looking at it without mercy. And the truth is that once you go deep enough, there is no mercy really, because there's just the truth. And the truth shines with penetrating force. And then once it is seen to a certain degree, attention is going to flow towards it like a magnet. There's not the ability to look away anymore. And in a certain way, if you are like in a suffering loop where constantly feeling like you're suffering and things aren't getting better, you're kind of forced to look at a part of yourself that is constantly in pain, but you haven't found the trust to take this next step and lean deeper into whatever is this painful. And I know this is very easy for me to say in this state that I'm right now, because I have processed this stuff, and it is much easier to speak from this like very, I could say aware place. But I know that once you start to actually feel all of the stuff coming up, it becomes extremely difficult. And it is no joke what experiences can up for a person once you look deeply. And it is very individual. Like, it really depends on the person. And it's not always just trauma stuff. Like, it might sound like I'm just always talking about some deep traumatic event from the past, which often happens, but it's not just that. It's also the fact that you're like a human and you're mortal. And this alone has so much conditionings attached to it that people are not aware of, and that can cause a lot of weird disturbance in your own consciousness that people do not expect and often find out because they are forced to put their attention on the stuff through a meditation retreat or through psychedelics. Like, meditation retreats and psychedelics are just forced meditation. And forced meditation is nothing but putting your attention on something and then seeing how your force of attention increases over time. And then with increased force of attention and increased stability of attention, you can actually hold your ground when, negative experiences come up without kind of breaking apart or losing yourself, which kind of, losing yourself is kind of the point, but it depends how and why, right? So you want to be prepared, and preparing yourself means doing the work of paying attention and noticing that attention is really a muscle that you can train. And that is exactly what meditation trains, and why it is having so many great benefits over a lifetime. You just need to be very patient with it and notice that you can access extremely beautiful states through attention as well. That the simplest sensations of your body through enough meditation can become truly blissful. And that this meditation thing isn't just like that to calm you down, but it's literally training of the mind. You train your peripheral attention through insight meditation, which is just noticing how many sensations kind of flow around you all the time and how quick they flicker, and how there's no self in them, how it is like an impermanence that is flowing through it all, and how it's never really satisfying. And this usually relates more to like peripheral meditation or like mindfulness meditation. And then you have concentration practices, which are like the typical practices of focusing on your breath or focusing on an object, and then noticing that your mind kind of goes away with like a thought, and then puts the attention automatically to the thought, and then you kind of stop focusing on what you're supposed to focus on. And then this habit of like going back into the mind and going back to thought is what you break through this meditation, and therefore you strengthen your meditation muscle, like your concentration and attention muscle. And through a stronger concentration muscle, you can then use the same like focused point of attention to the peripheral vision. And then after time, they kind of start to become one and the same. And you can put like the same concentration that you put on the focus, on the focal point, on the entire field of awareness. And this is how usually you get extremely blissful states as well. So at the end of the day, like the peripheral attention and the focused attention, they kind of start to merge once you become good enough at your attention. And people underestimate how much time or how much work it takes, but also how many benefits you can gain rather quickly if you just take it seriously for a while. The issue that people usually find themselves in is that, once I meditate, I actually feel kind of uncomfortable. It is not pleasant to notice how much my mind goes back to the head and how I can actually not focus. And then to always go back to whatever your focus object is pretty much the same as going to the gym and lifting weights and then getting better with this over time. And you cannot expect results too quickly. Like if somebody goes to the gym for 3 months and then wonders why they haven't grown like a ton of muscle yet, well then you're not having the right perspective about it. Like it's much more in depth. Like it needs to be kind of part of your lifestyle. And if you haven't done it regularly, then just starting with 20 minutes is something that I strongly recommend. But you don't just practice attention through meditation or through psychedelics, but you practice attention through your everyday life, and to notice what is it that you actually want to do with your day and what things are robbing your attention. Like, why are you just waking up in the morning and then looking at your phone and then noticing you feel foggy every day? Like, what is this mechanism that prefers this fogginess or forgets that this fogginess happens whenever you engage in this like bad habit? And more so when you interact with other people, the way you react to them is part of this interplay between your peripheral attention and your focused attention, like your peripheral awareness and your focused attention, I should say. Because if you are very reactive to what other people tell you, then you're basically not mindful. Like, you're not understanding how your attention mechanisms interplay with each other. Because if you're aware how you're feeling and how your body kind of has an impulse to react all of a sudden, then you don't want to be not aware of this impulse. You want to look at it directly too. And even if you then act it out, like somebody tells you something mean and then you insult them as a response, you kind of can notice with more awareness how this entire chain works, even though you don't change the chain. But you can still practice your attention by focusing on this chain of events, like something that triggers you, and then being aware of this trigger does kind of dismantle it over time. And it is this noticing that, oh, something in my peripheral vision or like peripheral attention has become more important now. So now it's kind of like a focus point in my mind. And because it is this focus point now, it becomes like this pain in the leg. It becomes kind of everything. And then you believe that you need to act because of it. And it is this belief where the ego hijacks your attention and makes you think that you are identical to it and therefore need to act the reaction out. And the only way you act a reaction out is kind of by merging the ego with whatever the attention at the moment wants. And it requires to look at the discomfort of saying, stop. I'm not going to react immediately. I'm going to purposefully delay it. Not even saying that I'm not going to do it, but just delaying it and then seeing how it feels like. And whatever it feels like in this moment is precisely where you'll start to uncover the complexes in layers in your mind. Because now you are not letting the automatic script fire and you're forced to look at what is uncomfortable. And if you do this every time, then sooner or later you awaken. And if you do it even longer and with more attention and with more care and with more discipline, then eventually you become enlightened. You truly see how nature functions and how reality functions and how you are kind of being in your own way all the time, and how everything you want out of your life is within this mechanism. And sometimes there might like a belief that wants to hijack it, like, oh, but I believe, like, I don't believe in this sort of freedom. I'm a determinist. And therefore, I don't actually have the ability to put attention where I want to put attention to. It's kind of all pre-programmed. Therefore, things just run on their own. And then somehow this might be even helpful for you if your natural awakening state moves you to put attention on things. Like, then, yeah, things just flow and you naturally flow towards putting attention on things you dislike, then that's fine. But if your natural operation mechanism is to not look at the things that are uncomfortable, then yeah, you eventually dig yourself into a hole of suffering that sooner or later forces you to put attention on it. This is also how suffering is kind of like this key mechanism that makes us awaken, because you can be very, very deep into an addiction or very deep into like a behavior that just harms you, and then still keep the lie up and still be delusional about it and just ram your head against the wall in the hope that something changes. And you kind of do it often enough until it hurts so much that a part of you is like, why am I hurting myself? Like, why is my attention flowing to the place that is self-destructive? And then you kind of awaken to the mechanism at play. So it is really attention that governs everyone's life. And it is attention that we all want to be more skilled at in order to become free of whatever is haunting us and gain all the immense potential that is to gain. What is possible if all of society were to put attention to the right things?